to order, I'll call the meeting to order in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I will listen for a motion to approve the agenda for the study session.
I make a motion to approve the agenda for our study session this evening.
All in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
All right, all opposed? Nothing heard. The agenda is approved. So on to number 2, which is on to you guys for the superintendent search firm and your presentation. I'll turn it over to you guys. Oh, Steve, we don't hear you.
There we go.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you online, Steve, but,
We've got it now.
We got it now.
cool.
Okay, let's try this again. Good evening, Mr. Youngberg, members of the board, President Kretzer. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening, and we have a lot of exciting, interesting information to share with you and to discuss with you, and we're very excited about this search and the progress we're making. So we have some slides, and Richard, are you going to advance those for us? Jackie, are those available?
Let me share my screen. Richard, do you want to?
I'm happy to, if that makes it easier for you. Just give me share rights.
Can you do it now?
No, but the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Let's try it now. All right, now try.
I think that'll work. Give me just a sec here.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, next slide, Richard. Well, you know our team by now, and we've been working hard on this, and Kathy Schoenfelder has been a great help with the corporate office. So we've enjoyed getting to know your staff, and many of you we're able to talk to individually, and it's been good progress so far. So we want to share that with you tonight. So this is our agenda. We want to discuss with the board the themes that we heard in those stakeholder sessions. We want to discuss our survey comments. We want to review the survey results. We want to look at the 31 characteristics and explain how that ranking process works. And then we want to review the promotional flyer. So that's what we're going to do this evening. So as you know, I spend a lot of time building the profile of what I like to call the ideal candidate. And that's the ideal candidate for North Mason School District. And I'm not going to read that whole slide to you, but you have an idea of how this works now. We start with stakeholder meetings, and we had a number of them. They went very well. We're going to give a full report on those meetings. We got great feedback from them. That's one part of building the profile. The other major part is the 31 quality survey. And we had good participation in that survey, and we will be sharing those results with you. Hopefully you got a chance to look at those, and that's good information as well. And then the most important thing we're going to do tonight is ask you to decide what are the top 10 or 11, maybe 12 characteristics you are looking for in your new superintendent. You'll have input from all the different groups, the survey takers, the stakeholders, but the board has to make the final decision using your judgment on what you think are the top 10 or 12 characteristics that we will use in screening candidates. Candidates will use that information as they decide to apply or not. So it's very important to build that profile based on the information we're going to discuss tonight. Okay, next slide. Let's skip that one. Okay, Libra.
Thanks, Steve. So we began our community outreach stakeholder meetings on Monday, November 18th. You guys have been incredible hosts. saw several different groups, had some participation and some great feedback. I think you can go to the next slide. And we continued on Tuesday the 19th with myself and Richard. Again, several groups had some great feedback, participation. As you can see, we had some areas that we did not have anyone show up, but we kept our doors open, and so we did have people come in and out and have a chance to speak when they wanted to. Next slide. So the main themes, and I want to first just summarize the community as a whole. You guys are really, really lucky to have such a strong connection to your community. I think that that came through loud and clear with every single group that we met with. The connection they felt to the school district, their commitment that they wanted to continue to have with the school district was very clear. So as a whole, I think the interpersonal decision-making skills, commitment to equity and justice, effective communication were like some of the abilities that folks were really looking at, and they felt the ideal candidate was sensitive to fostering this positive community environment, continuing that up, engaging, staying engaged, being intentional about that engagement, some experience K through 12, and of course, really good at recruiting staff. So the strengths of the district and what they were looking for seemed to match really well. I will say that there, in the few that I've done, the few searches that I've done, this particular community that showed up is a special community. I think the thing that really stood out was you had leaders from other sects of your community that were not just there, but dialed in and engaged. And so I really commend you guys on that. And that's something that you should carry with honor, because that's an amazing thing that you guys have. Next slide. And then, of course, it's a beautiful area, and everyone that was talking to us, they echoed that, and I think that that is a strong thing for us to emphasize as we recruit people. And then, of course, you have great participation in the athletics and extracurricular activities. Actually, we saw a game starting. I was so honored thinking they were all coming to talk to me, but they were all going to the game. So, it was really great to see that. And then, of course, people continue to talk about tradition and community pride for the district and the schools. Next slide. So main qualities, as I mentioned earlier: visibility, personable, collaborative, transparent, accountable, fiscally responsible. I think none of these characteristics will surprise any of you guys, but I will say everything that you see listed here, it did not come from one or two different groups. It was a nice stream between all groups that these were things that people were looking for. Student focused, good communicator, visionary, collaborative. I mean, all these things came out in every single group, maybe worded differently, but they were very consistent in what they were saying, the main themes. Next slide. And then critical issues facing the new superintendent. Again, these things were also very consistent. Obviously, the passage of your levy, and we know that bond that is also coming up right after that. Budget issues, wanting to make sure that those budget issues were something that the superintendent was well aware of. And then student academic success and achievement was high on the list of things people felt were critical for the next superintendent to know immediately. Next slide. I think it's back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Libra. Good evening, members of the board. So turning now to the survey comments, you should all have copies in front of you. There should be copies for each of you. We had about 74 responses to the actual comment section from various stakeholders. From our initial review, we really kind of saw, I think, 5 themes that came out of that. One centered on accountability. The next one was a focus on student discipline, kind of the need to have high expectations and high follow through when it came to misbehavior, particularly at the secondary level. As Libra mentioned, community connection and trust building, huge. That came out in a lot of different ways. Student-centered leadership was a really big one. And then the last kind of theme that we saw from the comments was And so lots of talk. Matter of fact, I think many people in Washington who were watching the Seahawks game saw the North Mason Band perform at and there was a lot of talk, particularly from students and some other community members, about the need to really look at resource allocation, not just in athletics, but in some of these other really strong programs, particularly band, for example, was brought up. So those were kind of the five major themes we saw coming out of the comments. So at this point, we kind of just want to open up to any further discussion from the board, any themes that you're seeing or any comments that maybe stood out that would be important for us to consider as we're developing this profile.
Do we have access to that room?
Yeah, it's on the, what I emailed you.
It is, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm looking at it now. It's really like, I'm impressed at just how much thought people put into these answers. You know, and that's just great to see. I want to kind of look at this a little bit more deeply. It's a lot of comments.
Jackie, do I have a link to that?
In the email that I sent you this afternoon.
Okay, I had to go somewhere special to pull everything up today, so I'm gonna have to read through those after.
One thing that I like to recommend to boards is that once you do have a new superintendent, sometime in July, maybe after a few weeks, to share this survey with the new superintendent, because it's a wonderful snapshot in time of what the impressions of the North Mason School District are right now in November 2024.
That's a great idea.
What is this connected to?
There's like 50 some odd. So when you're, the overall theme going through these comments is reflected in a lot of those qualities that you've identified, kind of feed right into that previous slide. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Did not pull up.
Right, the themes, the main qualities that people were interested in from the stakeholder meetings, main qualities of the new superintendent were visibility, being personable, collaborative, transparent, accountable, and fiscally responsible. That's many of the things Richard listed that he was identifying in the comments.
Yeah, I think one of the big themes, I mean, if I could, just in a couple sentences, it seems stakeholders expressed a really strong desire for a superintendent who adopts kind of a boots on the ground approach to understanding some of the challenges in the district firsthand. And that also kind of implements a coming alongside approach toward mitigating and addressing those challenges. I think that came out in a lot of different ways from various stakeholders.
Yeah, I just think this is it is a snapshot in time, so I think this is just really great data to have all these comments.
Now, there's a lot of passion in those comments. People really care about the district, they care about the education of their kids, and it's a big deal.
I think the last thing I would say that I think stood out to us was that stakeholders really emphasized the need for consistent, transparent communication and a leader who not only sets clear expectations, but ensures follow through to build trust across the district. And that's kind of that accountability piece. That certainly came out a lot too.
I love that comment.
Which comment?
74. A candidate who is one of us, not the
Yeah,
boss
that
of
was the
us.
very last
I
one.
love that comment.
You can tell the ones that are teachers.
Yeah. You can tell some of the ones that are parents too.
That's great. There's some of this too that we can use in other areas as well.
Yeah, some things are more about building.
There's so
Yeah.
many about
Level.
Belfair Elementary and.
No, and that's, I think this is good data to hand to Winnahaw too, with some of this.
Separate topic, but we need to somehow coordinate a service trip or something to Guatemala where a group of students actually go to and serve and learn about the community and then be able to come back and teach other students.
That would be cool.
60. I would like to see them at my school at least once a year.
You guys about got it?
Yeah.
All right. Let's, you guys can move on to the next slide. There's a lot of great information in there.
Awesome, thank you. All right, Libra?
So we have the 31 quality survey. Participation was 157 respondent. Really, really good. I want to point out the fact that these were online, and so even though it says 0 students online, Richard had the pleasure of having the largest group show up for him, and they were students. And so we did capture their voices in person, even though it says 0 here. So just wanted to make sure you guys are clear about that.
Maybe just interject really quick on that point, Libra, since there was zero. I would say the one thing, and it's come out a little bit, but I just want to emphasize this because, like Libra mentioned, I had 21 students total that I interacted with from the middle school and high school. Visibility and presence was hands down the number one thing that came from students. They mentioned they wanted a superintendent that was not just visible, but present. And when I pushed them on that, so I was like, tell me more about what you mean by present. It means someone who interacts with them, someone who doesn't just show up at games or at concerts, but shows a vested interest in the work that they're doing. And then someone who's an advocate, not just for students, but for the programs that they think are really important. So again, extracurricular activities, a lot of emphasis around rigor in courses. Students felt that AP classes in particular, needed to be more offerings around that. So just some highlights from the students, since we didn't get their voice in the survey. Those were some of the themes that came out in the meeting.
Great.
And teachers, same thing, accountability, wanted more follow through on the strategic planning. Administration, same thing, definitely more visibility. Wanted to make sure that they had an advocate that they could kind of get a hold of with ease. Support staff similarly had common goals in addition to political advocacy goals. There's some geographic challenges that you guys face, and so some of the support staff felt like someone politically savvy that could help them kind of navigate some of those things and get advancements would be great. Parents were similar to the students about rigor. They felt that the school district does really, really well with your special needs population. Would like to see the same thing replicated on the other side of the spectrum. And then your non-parent community groups, super impressive. One of the comments that really stood out to me was the fact that some of your business partners and community partners felt like the school district was perfect to be an incubator for things that could be scaled up for larger school districts in the state. They felt that you guys were perfectly set for something really powerful and innovative to be done there, and then see the success and see how it can be done in other places. Next slide. Is this me or you, Steve? Me? I can't hear you, Steve, but I'll keep going.
I was gonna say, I'm happy to do it if you want me to, but feel free to go ahead.
No, go for it. Go for it, Steve, it's all you.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna read that entire explanation for you, but I will explain what's in there, and hopefully you had a chance to see the hard copies of the survey results. Did everybody get a hard copy of those?
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good. We have them on the screen, but it's a lot easier to look at if you can look at the hard copy. And of course, I put my hard copy right where I could find it. And I'm not finding it. Hang on, I have it here somewhere.
Oh my God, will you stop?
Here it is. All right. So the first sheet is the raw scores sheet, and you probably got this all figured out by now, but just to walk you through it, if you look at that raw scores sheet, you can see across the top are the different groups. So we had teachers in that first column, we had 45 teachers participating. And the 31 qualities that are numbered 1 through 31 there on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side of the sheet is an abbreviated definition of that quality. And so you can see for teachers, 26 teachers ranked characteristic number 1 in their top 10. And so that was the third highest ranking item from the teachers. So that's why the rank is 3. So for each group, you can see the raw score and the rank. So that's the raw score sheet. If you go to the next sheet, it kind of makes more sense, I believe. And that one is labeled the consultant ranking recommendation sheet. So once again, you have the 1 through 31 on the left-hand column, and on the right-hand column, you have the abbreviated definition, so you can kind of keep track of them. So you can see that we did we just listed the rank score. That way, you know, the teachers don't get more votes than the board, because they had 45 teachers, there's only 5 board members. But as you can see, for quality number 1, which is willing to listen to input, but is a decision maker. Teachers, that was their 3rd ranked item. For administrators, it was the 2nd rank, and so on. You can see that the board, that was their 4th ranked item. Then we do a combined ranking between using the raw score from all those groups. It's kind of like golf, low score wins. And you can see that that first quality then has a combined ranking of 3, okay? So the one that was actually the highest ranked item, you go down to item number 28, you can see that the combined ranking is 1. That's promoting a positive and professional environment with mutual trust, respect among district employees and the board. And so on, so they are ranked 1 through 28 or 29, there's some ties in there, so it doesn't quite add up to 31. Are there any questions on how that ranking sheet works?
No.
Okay. So then you can see the column there that says consultant recommendation, and go ahead and put that up there, Richard. We actually are recommending 11 characteristics that we think have risen to the top. Now, you are free to disagree with us. You might find another one that you want to put on there. But you can see that we have the recommended, we put recommended by, if you're looking at the recommendation sheet, the column, we have the ones listed as recommend. And then because there was a lot of similarities, let me rephrase that. The very first item that we talked about, willing to listen to input, but as a decision maker, that ranked 3rd, ranked very high. But we also know that number 13 ranked pretty high also. I'm sorry, I read that wrong. No, I didn't. No, I read it right. I get confused myself. We're recommending that those 2 be combined. So that's why there's actually 11 that are recommended. And then on the next slide, you can see that there is 1 that finished 12th that we are saying you might want to consider this one if you wanted to have a total of 12. So, yeah, Richard, I think you're supposed to go over those 2 sheets, but you know what? It doesn't really matter. We're all here. We're all just happy to talk about anything.
Yeah, so essentially after reviewing all of the data holistically, when we looked at the survey responses, we looked at the comments, we sat down and we looked at the themes from the stakeholder meeting. These are the 11 characteristics out of the 31 that we believe are the most critical for the specific superintendent profile role as desired by the broader North Mason community. So we would recommend that these are the characteristics that you use for inclusion in the brochure. But obviously, like Steve said, before moving forward, we want to ensure that these are indeed in line with what you're seeing and thinking and hoping for in the next superintendent.
I would consider adding that 12th. I feel, I mean, these obviously rose to the top for a reason, and I think they're all excellent and should be included. I just think that that 12th adds in the element of student achievement, which feels a little bit missing from the other 11, and the other 11 sort of have a theme happening, you know, where it's really about leadership and presentation. So I think that 12th one would be a good addition. My thoughts.
Nick?
My question was, there were some that were in the combined ranking that weren't included in the recommendations. For example, they're, 6 and 7, but then they, we included, number 19 in the combined ranking. So I was just curious as to why, I'm fine with the recommendations, but I was just curious why they would vary the recommendations from the combined ranking.
I'm not following you. I'm looking at item number 19. I'm looking at item number 19 was ranked.
Which one
as
are you
13th.
going
Sorry, it's actually, there's a lot of numbers floating around, so if we're gonna look at item, then it was item 9 on the consultant ranking recommendation sheet had a combined ranking of 19, and it was recommended, and I was just curious why perhaps item number 11 that had a combined ranking of 7, or item number 12 that had a combined ranking of 6. I was just curious what the justification was. Not that I disagree with them, I was just curious to hear the justification for that difference.
Like, why aren't all of the
It's-
combined
They're not the top.
rankings
Right,
just,
and-
why aren't
Yeah.
the recommendations just the top 12 combined rankings?
Yeah. That's a simple and succinct way of saying it, but I guess we can do that.
Did they?
I understand your question, and I think it's an excellent one. I think we believe that based on what we heard, the ones we're recommending are the ones that are a combination of the survey and the stakeholder meetings. But we're certainly happy to consider adding in those items, replacing others if you'd like to do that.
I'm just looking at the combined ranking, it's not totally, right, there's 2 number 7s, it's not, or maybe that's just a typo and there's no number 8.
Yeah, I think some of them tied, so they did that.
Oh, I see.
If I have some questions later on, because I need to read through, but I can't see things at the same time, can I send a question over? I've got everybody's name and info. But, and any comments, or does that need to be done in a different way?
I like the idea.
No, you can put it in the chat, or you could email it later after the meeting. Either way is fine.
Okay, I think I have to do, but I'm using my phone and I can't switch back and forth at the same time, so mine will be after if I have anything.
A lot of overlap with some of the other ones, but just like he said, that one focus more on the students. I think we could have one focus more on the students.
Yeah.
So is our ranking weighed heavier?
Oh, okay.
Right, and that makes sense, right? What the 5 of us ranked, right?
Okay.
And then the teachers ranked because of what didn't go straight off of pure numbers. It went off of weighting to those numbers of the board, right, the teachers.
Got it. Speaking to Leanna's question, what is it that is expected of us at the end of this study session?
I think it's approved,
Yeah,
the flyer, so we can get the flyer sent out and approve the,
Okay,
Fine.
but then also having the 12 or 11 or however many we have for the profile for a
Yeah.
brochure. Okay.
That flyer that you've got there, approving that.
So I think Leanna, yeah, I think you can ask questions, but I think we're on a timeline.
Right, because we want to keep to this timeline.
Oh,
that he's
yeah,
got
no,
on the
I'm not
Okay.
going, I don't, my questions would not be, or comments would not be to change anything that's decided here
Okay.
tonight or moving forward.
Okay.
Just clarifications on things. It's all good, yeah.
I mean,
I just want to make sure I didn't do it in private when I needed to do it somewhere else.
Gotcha.
what were your
Okay.
thoughts, Nicole? I want to make sure, because we kind of stopped and we took a side
Right.
turn.
I guess I was trying to think of a way to either share, so if this gets released and we go with this, it's gonna look like we discounted the top 10, 11, 12 results. And in the spirit of transparency, which it seems like a lot of our community wants, how can we communicate that it's this and a combination of all those comments, I think is what I'm understanding. Does that make sense? Like, if we also were like, wait a minute, why did this turn out the way it did? How do we
Right.
include that in the narrative,
I think,
instead of it looking like we ignored?
Right.
We asked for the input, and then it looks like we ignored it.
so I truly think when we're looking at it, right, that lines 11 and 12 are the ones we're really talking about maybe we want to include, which is the ability to delegate and oversee work of staff and maintain accountability, and then experience and effective managing that will benefit a long-term financial health of the district. Is there any other ones that we could combine and fold those into that we already have on there?
Right. I was, starting to look at that too. I feel, well,
Because I really, like, when I'm looking at the rankings, right, everything that we have, with the exception of the 19, which that's huge, right? The commitment, and we heard that in some of the comments, the commitment to the businesses and other groups out there is something we really, truly, you look in the comments and see that a lot. So I think that one definitely needs to be there. But do we want to include the other two? And just somehow feed those into a couple?
which are the three you're talking about?
The two are the line 11 and 12.
And 20, or I'm sorry, 25, the student, the one that they asked us to consider.
No, I think the one they asked to consider, I think, goes in.
Yeah, it's just that numbers 11 and 12 ranked 6th and 7th.
And
And they include things like long-term financial health. I mean, we do have people talking about that in the comments. Maybe not in those terms, but
I mean, is there?
to me, numbers 6, 7, and 9 are so similar, like more or less the same thing. Strong communicator in speaking, listening, and writing, commitment to visibility and actively engaging with a broad range of community groups, and ability to build consensus and commitment among individuals and groups. We're looking for a strong communicator, someone who's going to be involved. So, I mean, I agree. I think we need to include that 11 and 12 back in because it feels like the others are kind of repetitive, or like
Right.
someone who's strong in one of those things is going to be strong, is going to have that trait to carry over
So-
with those others.
So, over to Steve and your team over there, is it possible to combine some of these, as you did with line 1 and line 13, and then add in those 11 and 12?
And even 13, that's really close to,
13's in there.
Yeah,
it is,
yeah, I think that we could combine 6 and 7, and I think we could combine 11 and 12.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
accountability.
I mean,
Okay.
I think if we could get it, a couple of those combined, then we can add those in there, so we're definitely,
I like 11 and 12 separate, but yeah.
you
I
want
think if
something?
we do that, we still end up with 11, I believe. Because we're combining 2
Oh,
and
yeah.
we're adding 1.
And I think also for the board, I think what we're gunning for the flyer is also different from what we want to make sure we address
Yes.
in the interview process. So
Right.
that might be another place where,
Yeah.
hey, the flyer had this, but these are the questions we definitely want answered because
Sure. Oh,
we
yeah.
heard you.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there'll be a deeper dive into those traits. Yeah.
So just to recap, to make sure we're all on the same page, what I heard is, the board is okay with the characteristics we had presented. However, you would like us to combine 6 and 7, also combine 11 and 12. And so we add both of those, and then, we wanted to add 25, which was the one on student performance.
Yeah, not to like split hairs. I feel like 9 and 7 are closely linked more
I
so
agree.
than 6 and 7.
I agree.
Richard, can you go back a slide? May I make a suggestion to the board?
Sure.
Because I see the best combination being, and this is based on this slide, so I'm using the numbers from this slide with the blue screen.
Yeah.
I see 5 and 20 being a natural combination
Yes, actually.
and not being things that were really emphasized by the community, right? You guys see that?
Yes, yes, I would agree with that.
And then I think 6 and 7, the challenge that I think you'll have with combining those things is that the outward connection was pretty clearly stated, and that demonstrates commitment to community visibility it's a standalone.
Okay.
If you think about what was said. So my suggestion, a more natural combination that I'm seeing is 5 and 20. For you to
Okay.
get more space to then combine the 6, the other one that's missing.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. Or does that still leave room then for adding back in the 11 and 12 that aren't on here?
Yeah, I think so, but it also doesn't combine two things that were emphasized separately by the community, you know what I mean? Where they kind of could be lost somewhere.
So in
Do
this
you
latest
think,
proposal, the
Libra,
garage-
Libra, what about 6 and 9? What do you think about combining those two?
So I think, the reason why I think 6 needs to stand alone is because there was a lot of discussion about communication and not just communicating in terms of like a standard and a strategy, but like communication in terms of written and non-written. And so I think that that's a really powerful by itself sentence. So combining it with 9 is also, it could be done, but then building consensus and commitment among individuals and groups. Maybe 9 can go more with that 7.
Right, I suggested that.
It's the same kind of concept there. I just don't want to lose certain things that were just said over and over again, and communicator was a big one. So I don't want to combine it with something and lose that, because that was a powerful statement they made.
And I also, sorry, I was just gonna jump in. I see what you're saying, and even as I read into 11 and 12, I hesitate to put those together because there is definitely a communicating with your staff and overseeing staff aspect that I heard in the comments, and then also that whole financial health of the district
Yep.
is,
I think it's its own.
so,
Yeah.
Can we have, what, 15 qualities? I mean, seriously.
So maybe the 5 and 20, so that gives you space for another one. And then the 9 and 7 gives you
Okay.
space for a second one, so you can put fiscal in there and the staff, you can separate them. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Yeah, I still want the
open.
student performance one in there. The one,
The additional 12.
25.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And that keeps it at the 12. If
Okay.
you do those two combos.
Okay.
All right.
Perfect.
I think we're on the same page. Great.
All right.
Thank you for stepping in and just guiding that.
So Richard, did you hear what I said, Steve and Richard? Does that make sense?
Let's go ahead and over communicate just to make sure, so go ahead.
So I'm saying, my suggestion was 5 and 20 are combined. And then 9 and 7. And then we're fitting
25.
the gaps, we're putting the other 2 that we're missing.
25,
Got it.
11, and
Fine.
12.
Okay.
Alrighty.
I like it.
So,
Thank you for your work on this,
yeah,
by the way.
we've got to
Yeah,
kind of
it's
move it.
impressive.
Yes.
We got to move it along here because we're running up against 9 minutes until our normal board meeting will start.
Yeah.
Well, we are just about done. Just want to remind you of the timeline that we're going to start advertising this position tomorrow. But we do want you to look at the brochure, the flyer. Just make sure you approve of that thing. We'll put these characteristics that we just approved in there, and
Yeah,
maybe
there was
hopefully it'll come up on the
something,
screen.
yeah. We need to put in the month and year. I mean, what is the recommendation for that? I also have a bunch of edits on it, so I'm fine with approving it, but I would want to have you give this to Amanda tomorrow. And they're just like, clean it up a little bit.
Oh, that's great.
Just grammar things. Suggestions. What should we do about that red piece?
I mean, we could just put lines in there and then send it in, but we need to make sure we have it, by noon? Tomorrow, maybe?
When do they wanna?
When do you guys want to, when do we need to have edits to you?
What the edits you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm also talking about the edit. What do we
Oh,
need to do for that?
anytime tomorrow will be fine.
What did you say?
What did you say, Richard?
I'm
Sorry,
gonna give them 2 years.
a couple days?
Anytime tomorrow.
Okay, anytime
Okay,
tomorrow.
thank
So
you.
the candidate, so we were talking about the licensing prior to starting?
Before the warranty runs out.
Yeah, no,
I mean, that's,
What is?
the licensing requirement,
Right, so
right?
should we
Or
say-
What are we gonna say, 6 months? Are we gonna say a year?
Yeah,
What
how
is
long does it take
typical,
to-
Steve, what's typical for, if they don't have their
Superintendent license,
superintendent license but they need to obtain it?
or they're close.
For the brochure, it would be typical to list it as superintendent certificate preferred. If the person doesn't have it, then that could be negotiated as part of the contract.
So maybe
Okay.
just
That
strike
works.
They
that.
have a license in a different state, how long are we giving them to get a Washington state?
I think it would depend on how long.
Can we just strike it? Do we
Yeah,
need to
we
have
could just
that in
strike
there?
that, and then,
it needs to be in the
Case-
contract.
it
but
just, when we
not in the
negotiate it,
flyer.
we can go back
Right,
and
yeah.
talk about that.
Because then
Because
that
if it's a
leaves
candidate that we
us.
really, really like, they need a little
Yeah,
bit.
it leaves
Sorry,
us
say
more
what?
flexibility, right?
Of having our
When we
own
talked
thing.
about
Yeah.
this before, didn't we say, or you guys were talking about 1 year was typically or maybe historically that people are most often given up to a year, even up to a year, to obtain that? Is that what we talked about before?
I think we
That's
did,
common, yes.
but what
Yeah.
Richard, what
I
Steve
mean,
is
you're not
saying,
putting it in there, I just think that question was still out there, I just thought it might be.
right, what Steve is saying, Leanna, is that we can talk about that. If we like a candidate, we could talk about that at that time. We don't have to have it in the flyer.
Oh, yeah, no, I heard that and then I just thought it was cool to bring it up. That when we had talked about it before, that was the comment, even if we're not adding that into the actual application itself or the applicant's must.
I think it's a nice to have, but I don't think it's gonna be a requirement. It's more of.
Just for our brains, I guess. No
So
big deal.
willing is the key word.
Willing, right.
Okay.
Do we need to approve this?
Yes, we need to approve
Okay.
this.
Did Leanna's question get answered? I wasn't following.
I think so.
Oh, okay, just a comment.
Oh, I didn't have one.
Oh, okay.
No, I thought you had asked that question, and then when they said that would be part of something that we would ask or use when we're talking about their contract or whatever.
So I'll make a,
I just thought answering that we had talked about it before was
Okay.
maybe not
Gotcha.
important, but it's there.
So-
No question.
do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to approve the flyer, provided board members can submit edits by noon to Jackie and Amanda by tomorrow. Not substantial edits, is that, I feel comfortable
Yeah.
with that?
I'm
Doing like
fine.
punctuation, grammar.
Punctuation, grammar.
Yeah, like saying things more succinctly.
I'm good with that. So all in favor of approving the flyer with slight modifications?
Did you ask for a discussion
Do-
on that?
Hold on. So,
Okay.
so we have a motion. Is there a motion to approve the flyer? Is there any discussion?
And if you,
And I did, but then Arla added that what she wanted, brushed up, I guess, and so I'm fine.
Okay. And you guys?
Yeah, no, I think Arla covered it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All in favor of approving the superintendent search flyer with modifications due tomorrow?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? You're opposed to that, Leanna, or are you good with that?
No, I said aye on
Oh, okay.
the first one.
Okay.
I might be delayed.
All right. All right, so
Thank you, yeah,
we will approve that flyer.
thank you.
Yeah.
So, go back here.
That's all we need.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you,
so
Steve.
much.
So
Thank
we
you.
will adjourn
Adjourn.
this meeting, and we will go into the school board meeting starting at 6:30 in 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, guys.
Bye, guys.
See you
Good night,
next
Leanna.
time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie.
Is Dana coming for this? Oh,
Yeah,
there
she's
she
right there.
is.
I do a lot of flyers and publications for work, so it's like, so when you said grammar, yeah, like it's too much. And to go like, it's like your printer, do you use all your color on the first two pages and then you don't use them? So, no.
I know, yeah, but, I guess it's like, it's not being like blasted on Facebook, it's just
Yeah.
going to whoever wants to.
Yeah, that's kind
apply,
of
I
what
guess.
and I'm not saying it's bad, it's different from how would do it.
I'm saying it's bad.
No, I've
I know, you're right, it's not the worst. Oops. Why is it so busy? Is there something happening?
There's that dry wit we like.
sorry. My son's alarm went off at 4 a.m. and I'd already not been sleeping, so I woke up. I'm normally all chipper and nice, but I woke up.
Oh yeah, you all the time, 100%. Like,
PO'd. You were being sarcastic. I don't really appreciate that.
I feel like I had so many questions and oh, this looks, okay. So, okay, yeah. Policy 3240. Yeah, yeah. It's not on the agenda, but it's
It's the whole thing, yeah. Yeah, unless you wanna let them all do it to start with, it's up to you. It's in the end of our agenda.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the flag salute.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. And President Krotzer is not here today. She is excused with a family emergency, so she will not be here, and so is Emily Bybee. So, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as written?
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
All in favor?
I.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. All right, public comment for agenda items. So you said the high cap, is that on the agenda? Is the high cap on the agenda?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think it's on the agenda.
Okay,
Nope.
okay. So we do have a section for public comments for things not on the agenda. That is later in the agenda unless the board wants to move that up front.
Where is it on the agenda?
It's on the very
Oh, I see.
bottom,
At the end.
under
During
adjournment.
Do we have a lot of public comments?
We have two that would like to speak to the board.
Not about the agenda?
No, a high cap program and SRO.
I'm fine with moving it up.
Nicole?
I'm fine with that.
Yes,
Okay.
aye, sorry.
All right, so if Michael, there you go. Go ahead.
Please.
Come on up.
Yes, right up.
So, hello? All right. I'm Michael Macareg. My daughter last year took the coag test and was, labeled as the gifted. And over the weekend, my wife and I and our friend had went to the National Association for Gifted Children Convention.
Cool.
You know, so because there was a lot of questions we had for ourselves as parents, and we had a meeting last year after the testing, and then we got the test results, and then we had like an after-school meeting, and there was a lot of, we could do this or we could do that, and then at the beginning of the year, I think there was a few parents that were going, well, I wonder what's going to be offered or what's going to be different for my child, and we haven't noticed quite anything. So then we went to this convention, and then we also noticed that it was a thing going on across the board, across the country, it seems like. You know, we looked on the website, and then we see how it says the school provides clustered classrooms and this and that, but I feel like my daughter is not being challenged enough in certain topics, and mainly a lot of them. But we just want to bring to light, if we're saying we're doing these programs and there's funding for it, we should be doing something for this group of kids. So just want to bring up the topic.
Thank you.
Great, we appreciate you bringing that up. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And somebody will contact you to discuss it more.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And then Stephen.
So, my name's Stephen. My daughter goes to Sandhill, and my topic's on SROs due to last week's threat. As a parent, that's the worst message I could see. I'm from Kitsap County. We moved here recently, and I'm used to every school has an SRO, Monday through Friday, open to close. I want the board to really make that a priority, to make that relationship work with the sheriff's office or private avenue. Unarmed security does nothing against a bullet. That's common sense. And I feel like that should be one of the number one priorities in anyone that's a parent with a school, is those little ones being protected at all costs. You know, luckily this happened within 2 minutes of me picking my daughter from school, so I have to explain to her why all the cops are out there with rifles. She's 5, she's not gonna understand. And I don't want that conversation with a 5-year-old. Luckily, it was a false alarm. But I really wanna make sure that this is a very big topic. I know you guys can't do a lot of things on your end, but I really want everyone to please put some thought into it. Really think of options or routes to make something happen, to make sure these kids are being protected fully, especially in this day and age. You know, we hear about it every day, somewhere in the country, and it's the worst message anybody can get. And I'm trying to think of how to say this, sorry. I still get heated thinking about that message. And I really hope when he's identified, he is dealt with properly. I personally don't want him in my daughter's school, I can tell you that. He's a threat in my opinion, and I don't care. And I don't think there's a parent out there that's gonna disagree. But I really feel like we need to do our part in protecting our babies.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And my daughter goes to Sand Hill as well. And I was across the state when that came through. So I know exactly the feeling that you've got.
It's a gut wrenching.
Yeah, very much so.
You know,
Very much
we
so.
all see it on the news, but you don't really feel it in your gut till it
Yep.
hits home.
Yep,
And when that's your little girl that goes there,
yep,
that's a phone call I don't want to get.
exactly.
That's not a good thing. So I please really put some thought into it on what you guys can and can't do, and come up with a good game plan to protect our children.
100%.
Please, that's all I can ask. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much. All right. The student board member comments. Do you have anything for us today? Okay. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right, discussion?
I do have a comment. Policy 3240, it kind of looked like, let me go back to it.
3420.
3420, yes, thank you. We're like line 25, insert the following language, and then line 9 on the next page, insert the following language. Is that a placeholder? Can we remove the like insert
Yeah,
and
that's
just?
a placeholder, and that will come out. The district, when the EpiPens become available to us at, our nurses are writing
Yeah.
a grant to be able to have those in all of our buildings that are not student-specific, but to have a stock
Right,
for the random or the unexpected
allergic reaction.
allergies. So we have some language that will go in that piece when we have those in stock. But when we publish this online as a completed with the new language, Jackie will, for now, eliminate that line.
Okay, so that, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
That we don't have that piece yet, but we want to know where it's gonna go.
But we're in the process, and we're hoping to have them before we have another board meeting, so we'd kind of like to get this done, approved
see.
and move forward.
I see, okay. That was my only kind of question, I think.
Is there any other discussion? Cole or Nick? All right. All in favor of approving the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? None heard. The consent agenda passes. Moving on to the family engagement presentation.
So tonight, Laura Pugh and Mateo Santiago, our family and community coordinators, are here to tell you about their work.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Pugh, the Family Community Intervention Liaison,
Mateo Santiago, Community Liaison.
and we have put together a few slides with quite a few pictures to share with you what has been happening here in North Mason. The first piece, we do want to talk specifically about our McKinney-Vento qualified students. The McKinney-Vento Act is federal legislation that defines homelessness as the following categories: students who lack fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence in any of these living situations, including sharing housing due to a loss of housing, economic hardship, or similar reason, which is by far the most common qualifier in our student community, but also students living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, campgrounds, transitional shelters, public-private spaces, cars, and certain migratory children living in qualifying situations. So the next part, Jackie, if you could share it. We did want to let you know that at this point in time, we have 248 students in North Mason School District who are qualified as McKinney-Vento, which puts us right at 10% of all students enrolled in North Mason qualify in one of those federal criteria of experiencing homelessness. So this graph that's included in your packet shows the actual number of students in each grade for each school as of last Monday when we submitted the slides for the board packet. We have had 3 additional students identified as experiencing homelessness since Monday, so that's why the current number is 248 instead of 245. And you can see that it is spread out through all grades, including our TK program, students in DPS, and some students who are served by Holly Ridge. We have that as that PK block for students who are under age 5.
Is that like a 3 in that PK, or is that 2, do you think?
I believe it is 3 right now in that range, yeah. So we just want to share this with you so you have a picture of some of the deep needs our students are experiencing, and then we'll also share some of the things that we're doing specifically to engage not only families who are experiencing homelessness and are McKinney-Vento qualified, but also all families in North Mason.
So some of the direct services that we are providing to our students and families is that we are helping them with getting an ID, a state ID. We have 8 at Belfair, 18 at Sign Hill, 6 at Haggis Middle School, and 7 at North Mason High School. So this is so helpful because for a lot of our families, it's very hard to get an ID. They require many pieces of documents in order to get an ID, so this is very helpful. And also we are providing interpreters for our conferences. We had conferences at the end of October. And Maria Gaspar, she is our district interpreter, and we also hire many other outside interpreters to help us with this. So we did help 69 families at Belfair, 84 at Sign Hill, and 84 at Haggis Middle School as well. And high school, they do an open house kind of conferences, so we didn't get a specific number. But, and also we do have bilingual resources list on the website. So under department, we have this list of all of the resources that we have in our community.
And printed copies of the list were also delivered to all students who qualified for McKinney-Vento services. They're available with all of our counselors at each building. And then we've had the same printed copy of that list that's available on the website at multiple family engagement events throughout the year. So it has resources like emergency, housing, food, counseling, medical, and then legal services as well. The next one about our community resources. In August, our Family Engagement Department big event is coordinating the picnic to include all of our district resources, but also our community resources. So this year we did have over 40 community resource providers present in that resource fair with all the tents in the rain out on the field by the high school and the community gym. We also access an organization called Northwest Children's Outreach. They are a multi-state organization that connects children in need to physical resources like clothing specifically, but also they can do school supplies and diapers for our families who have younger kids too. They're housed in the community gym just across the parking lot, so we work really closely with them. As of last Monday, we had connected 137 of our North Mason district students to some kind of clothing, hygiene, school supply resources, and also 35 siblings who are not yet enrolled in school, mostly to resources like diapers, but clothing as well. So it's really helping strengthen that connection to our families in the community by helping them understand what resources are available and get basic and essential needs met. We've also been able to get specific supplies for our health rooms at different district buildings through Northwest Outreach as well. Another connection to community resources, we do still have the COVID response grant from 2020 where we're able to help families meet some essential needs that way as well. And the top pictures here, last 2 Thursdays ago, on the 14th, we took 23 students from North Mason High School and Hawkins Middle School to the Latinx Prevention Summit that was put on with the partnership of a number of organizations in the county to help do some of that important prevention work for substance abuse. At the summit, Mateo was awarded a Latino Community Leadership Award for his tireless efforts over the last 10 years to the North Mason community, specifically for his outreach to our Conjobal and Spanish-speaking community members. So we wanted to make sure the board knew about that as well.
Congratulations.
So we also have do help with the family events. We have a small committee who are formed by Hispanics members. And we also have the community English class, which is going now across from us every Monday, 6 to 8. And we also we do translation or interpreting for the bond meeting that has been going on. We did have about 50 to 60 families to sign up for the Giving Tree, which is a big event in the community. And also during school events, we provide all the resources like night to school, back to school night, and during conferences, we provided also resources, and also we have with the MLL Family Night support.
Are there any questions?
Going back to our McKinney-Vento students, do you know how many are unaccompanied youth?
We have approximately 30 unaccompanied youth right now. I did not write down the accurate number, and we have had some newly identified and some recently withdraw students as well. But
That
it's a-
changes all the time because
Mhm.
we sometimes have people moving somewhere else or we have new families coming in. So,
And my experience at Balfour was sometimes we had things printed in other languages, but there was still a barrier with some families not being able to read. So are we thinking of perhaps alternate modes of communicating, like audio or video or?
so for Spanish, we are sending all of the information in Spanish, or at least we're trying to do that. But we have a large community here in this area who can speak Kanjubal.
Mhm.
So it's when I step in and because I do speak Kanjubal and I'm the one who's communicating with them. And also we make sure when we have a new family coming in, we do make sure to let them know that we have Spanish and Kanjubal interpreters with us.
Thank you so much for what you do.
And do we have a liaison for McKinney-Vento for the district? Is that?
So, yeah, so I do a lot of the work specifically with families.
Yeah.
And then Chris Turner is our McKinney-Vento liaison for the district.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so you might see there's posters at different public spaces around town that we distributed in August at some of the public places like the library and the food banks and the laundromats. If you're experiencing one of these living situations, call this number. So that number goes straight to Chris, and then he has us communicate with the families depending on their language needs.
Okay, cool.
Very good.
Buen
Thank you
hecho.
Very much.
Great work.
Thank you, guys.
All right, now we're moving on to the board development language with the superintendent update.
Yeah, so before we get into some really great presentations, I wanted to share with you two pieces of communication that we did this month. The first one is a funding letter that I led the superintendents of our region in writing. And as you know, sometimes when you write, you're pretty hot about something. So we had to edit it several times so that we wouldn't make the people so mad who were reading it that we had the opposite effect of what we intended. But earlier this fall, we learned from OSPI that they had underfunded the transition to kindergarten programs for the year. So a message was sent to superintendents that said basically kind of, oops, we don't have enough money to pay for your programs that we told you we would pay for the whole year. So sometime after the first of the year, we're going to quit paying you. And we did not think that that was a very responsible position for OSPI to take. So as a group, we sent a letter and said, no, we understand things happen, but these are among the most vulnerable children in the state, and you can't just pull the funding and say, figure it out to school districts when school districts are in such a tight place with budgets around the state right now. And I will say, interject for North Mason, the funding for that program from last year is only able to be used for that program. So we do have some carryover that would allow us to continue if they don't fund throughout the year, as they have said they're not going to. But we have a lot of children on the waiting list, enough for 2 more classrooms, and we were hoping to add more classrooms at the first of the year, which we won't be able to do now because of that funding situation. So it's pretty serious. In response to our letter, within 24 hours of getting it, Chris Reichdahl, the state superintendent, and his assistant superintendent notified us that they will be joining us at our next meeting in Bremerton of the regional superintendents to discuss our concerns. So I'm proud of us for doing that, because often as school districts, we get news like that from OSPI and we just go, oh, darn it, what are we going to do now? And have to, and we don't fight back. So we fought back respectfully, eventually, by the time we sent the letter. But we'll see what comes from that meeting. But I wanted to make you aware that we're doing that work. The second piece is a report from our construction team at West Sound Tech. And I just think, I get these monthly, and I want to share, now that they're really showing some progress, share those with you. The whole one-page document is in the board report, but it shows that we are on track right now still for the new construction, the construction that's ongoing now at West Sound Tech to be ready for kids in the fall, when school starts. And then they're hoping to, they funded in first step, and then the second step has to be separately funded to do the second part. But right now, we're on track with phase one, and we're really excited for having those new spaces for kids to engage in that career and technical learning in the fall. So that was what those were about. And
Thank you.
thank you. Next up, we have our instructional leadership team and principals to talk about our district goals for behavior and discipline.
Hi, good evening. I'm Chris Turner. I'm going to start us off. We can go to the next slide. I want to start us off with talking about last year. This presentation was talking about PBIS and how we measure PBIS within our buildings. We have done a good job with PBIS and getting better at that every day. So we've changed it a little bit. Now we're looking at our discipline rates. And so we want to share that data with you guys. You have it in your board packet. It's all broken down, so I'll give you some more information here. When we talk about discipline rates, this is from the state, and they're talking about out-of-school suspension and expulsion and removal. So they're not talking about after-school detention or in-school suspension. It's all about out-of-school suspension. So this slide here, all the slides are kind of set up the same. We have last year's data, 23 and 24, and then we have our data so far this year over the first 2 months. And so if we look at our suspension rate last year, we had a 4.3% suspension rate. So far this year, we're sitting at 1.8. So we're working hard on that. You can see the grade levels and where we had greater and lesser amounts of suspension on this. To put this in perspective, back in 18-19, the last year before COVID that we had some normal statistics, we had a 7.8% suspension rate. And our special education was at 15%. So it's greatly reduced from there. If we were to look back at 22-23, our discipline rate was 3.6, which is a little bit lower than this, and the state was at 3.5. So we're right in line with the state, and we're anticipating for 23-24 that we will also be in line with the state. Yep, I think that's that. Okay, this slide. So when we start looking at disproportionality, we want to make sure that we're not impacting one particular population more than another population. How are we going about doing that? And when you look at race, we don't see much disproportionality there. Nothing is really standing out. What we do see is there's disproportionality between boys and girls. Boys are disciplined at basically twice the rate as girls. I think that's pretty standard in the state. Doesn't mean that it's right. Doesn't mean we're not going to work on it. But you can see the statistics there. So disproportionality as far as discipline rates, suspension, we're not seeing very much difference there. Okay, next slide, please, Jackie. Okay, this is where we do seeing a little bit of disproportionality. I know there's a lot of numbers on this slide, but it's looking by a group or program. So we're looking at our English language learners, then our foster care kids, our homeless kids, our low-income kids, military kids. And when you look at all those, we find two areas that we see some disproportionality, and that's for our students with IEPs. It's down there in the bottom right. You can see that with our students with IEPs, 8.63% of them have received discipline or a suspension versus 3.45 of students without IEPs. And then if you look at students with 504s, which is also dealing with disability, we have 7.14 have received discipline versus 4.08 those without. And so that's an area that we are focusing on this year. You'll see it in school improvement plans. You'll see it in the stuff that's shared with administrators later about how we're looking at that and how we're going to go about addressing that. So that shows you our stuff there. This last slide for me is just to give you a little bit of overview of some of the stuff that we are doing discipline-wise. This year, OSPI came out with some new emergency discipline rules, which you guys are aware of. And policy, what is it, 3241, you guys have already updated it. And we're working on the procedures for policy 3241. How are we implementing those new changes? For those procedures, we're having a series of meetings with the assistant principals from every building and me, and we're looking at how are we going to meet those requirements. And part of that is to come up with a set of basically limits about where you can suspend, where you can't suspend, what sort of discipline should we use for different types of infractions. And so we're doing that. Taking it a step further, and each building already has this, but we're going to refine it even better. But we call them, buildings have internal protocols. They're starting points. So where do we start? So like if a student gets in a fight, where do we start? A fight, is it 2 days suspended? Is it 5 days? What we're not going to do is take everything and say, well, you're 5 days. Well, you're 1 day. Because that leaves the door open for a lot of bias. And so what is a starting point for a fight? And let's just say that it's 2 days. Then we start looking at the individual circumstances, and we may say, well, you know, we noticed this and this is going on. We don't think it's worth 2 days. And that's where the two administrators, the protocol is, here's our starting point where most is going to land. But when it doesn't fit, the two administrators talk about it and say, no, that's not right. And they agree that this other discipline, this 1 day or 3 days is more appropriate. But then we have two of our professionals making the decision about what's the appropriate discipline for that student in that situation. So we already have those in place. We're going to further develop them this year. Some other things that we do within the buildings is discipline is often looked at like minor behaviors and major behaviors. And that's a great way to look at it. We want to further define that, operationalize it. Minor behaviors are really teacher-managed behaviors. Those are the things that happen in a classroom that a teacher deals with. You know, a kid may be disruptive, say some things or misbehaving, and a teacher will work with that student. They may redirect the student in the class, they may use some nonverbals, they may step out in the hall and have a quick conversation. All those are teacher-managed behaviors. And in buildings, we track some of those so we can look at them. But that happens in the class, the kids stay in the class. The next step is admin-supported behaviors. This is where a kid misbehaves and they deserve to be written up. They deserve some admin attention, but they can stay in class. That means they stopped with redirection. Let's say a kid got hot and was saying some things they shouldn't say. Teacher redirected him, stepped in the hall, kid took a breather, came back, and he can stay in class. The kid deserves a write-up to admin so they can deal with it. But we want the kid in class so they can learn. That's where kids learn, in class. So those would be admin supported. Then admin managed is where the kid needs to go to the office. They're so disruptive or it's not safe or like a fight going on. Admin managed. Admin deals with it entirely. So admin supported and admin managed are the discipline that ends up in Skyward. That's what we would see and that's what we document and follow in Skyward. Where teacher managed, that's managed in another way, but that's all about the teachers and how they're doing that. So steps, how do we get there? Well, we talked a little bit about PBIS. I think you guys are very familiar with that. And buildings are coming up with very clear and strong programs about how to improve their PBIS. North Mason's doing a great job. They're advertising their pillars, and they moved their TFI up to 80% right off the bat this year. So, I mean, that was our goal before, and they're hitting it at the beginning of the year. And then classroom interventions, we're making those clearer. What should happen in the classroom? What are tools that teachers have to help redirect students and get them back on board so they can learn? So that's going on. We're going to further develop our alternate forms of discipline. What else can we do besides suspend kids? And now those include lunch detention, after school detention, in-school suspension, but those are pretty standard. What are some of those things that we can do differently? So instead of kids being suspended, can we do a restorative conference, restorative circle? Can we do buybacks? Instead of putting a kid out, can we say, you'd be out, but if you do this, we're going to keep you in school because we're going to use a different learning process. We have behavior contracts with kids where we outline specific steps about what they can do and what we can do to help support them. So we're putting all those things in place because, again, we want kids in class. And the last thing written up there is continuation of education. When kids are suspended, we continue their education. It's on our suspension forms, the exact steps each building is taking to ensure that that student can continue on with their studies. If a student's out for 3 days, we don't want them not engaged in school for 3 days. We want to make sure that we're giving them stuff that they can keep on and how do we check it in with them. So all that's just part of the process. The buildings are doing all this work. They're doing a ton of work. It's not just rubber stamping suspensions. They're doing a ton of work to try to help kids behave in a manner that we need to and then keep them engaged in their education. So the next series of slides, each building, they're going to give you the same information, building by building by building, so you guys can look at it. We're trying to make that super standard. But then they also have some individual things that they have going on in their buildings that they'll share with you as well. So thank you. Who's up first?
Sandhill.
Sandhill.
Hello, my name is Tyler Lundy. I'm the assistant principal at Sandhill.
Jessica Collins, principal at Sandhill.
And I have the opportunity to talk to you about our students who are in need of some of the strongest Tier 3 support that we have. This first slide here, you'll notice that, well, I'll start off by saying we developed a lofty goal to reduce the number of referrals that we have within our building. The rationale behind that is thinking that the fewer ODRs you have, the fewer suspensions you're going to have, which is a goal that we have had shared with us. You'll notice that for September and October, we had a total of 7 students who have been suspended. And although that number says 1.8% up there, that's actually 1.3%. So we have 7 students that are on our Tier 2, Tier 3 focus right now for needing some extra support with behavior. So here you'll see specific suspension rates by demographic. Last year there was a notable discrepancy between the number of female and male students receiving suspensions, as well as students who identify as 2 or more races. And then, here we're looking at the discrepancy by program. We see that students with disabilities were suspended at a rate of 8%, compared to their differently abled peers at 1%. And then looking at our subpopulation of multilingual learners, they were suspended at a rate of 1.35%. And then looking at this, can we go back? Looking at this year, this is currently where we are with our students with disabilities, 3.7%, and students without disabilities at 0.8%, and English learners at 0.7%. And then lastly here, you'll see at the top our behavior goal. In partnership with stakeholders, we are looking to decrease our office discipline referrals by 20% by this coming spring, where we are specifically focusing on our multilingual learners and our students with IEPs. The action steps that you'll see below are outlined in our blueprint commitments, and they highlight our restorative approach to dealing with but providing students the skills that they need to be successful when it comes to their behavior and their behavior management. We have an outline here of our specific if-then type of things, where when a behavior becomes an administrator-managed behavior, this helps outline kind of our starting points for how to best respond to that behavior. Knowing that each student is unique in their need. This is obviously not a black and white process, and we also work, especially with students with IEPs, we work with case managers to discover what might be the best or most appropriate response to the specific behavior.
So is it that you have, so say it's disruption, that S45,
Mhm.
these are all of the tools with the paw in it. These are things you can choose among?
Yeah,
Or
so
do
for
you try to
each,
hit it all?
for each, well, it's kind of a menu of choices.
Okay.
For each time we receive what we call an ODR, we try to break the response into 4 components. So there's a reflective practice, a restorative practice, a reteaching practice, and then a consequence. Not every time does each one of these pieces seem applicable, but in that process, we look at choosing typically one of each of those
Okay.
areas.
Like a menu, like?
Yeah,
Different.
depending on like
Food
that
groups.
specific student, yeah. And then below there, you'll see kind of the ways we're monitoring our progress. Yeah.
Questions?
With something like the restorative circle, do you keep in mind, so say if it's aggression toward another student, you keep in mind the other student's comfort level with being in a situation like that?
Most of the time, if it's a one-sided aggressive thing, we probably would not do a restorative.
Okay.
That's why this is a menu. Yeah.
And oftentimes, like, conversation with parents would happen prior to that to see, has the student shared with the parent their level of comfortability in having that discussion.
Okay.
Sometimes that process might start with a referral to the counselor, but requesting like individual meetings with those students, and then the counselor can discuss with them, are you comfortable having a group?
Okay.
And sometimes the answer is no, and that's okay too. So we're also teaching that skill of boundaries are good and to be respected, and sometimes we reevaluate those boundaries, so.
It might be worth an asterisk at the bottom, like, in case anybody takes that and, like, but no, I love it. I love the document.
Mm-hmm.
Great job. Thanks, guys.
Excellent.
All right, Belfair Elementary.
Presenting tonight? I'm Pam Fussman, principal at Belfair Elementary School.
Christy Dolby, assistant principal at Belfair.
So our slides just look almost identical, just a little bit different in some of those suspension rates and categories that we're coming from. I think this has been really good for Christy and I to see our information spread on graphs like this too, to see how we're doing and with our suspension rates and where we need to go. So and let you kind of take a look at this right now. And then we can go on to the next one.
Do you know, so this 1%, how many students is that right now?
We would have to sit down and look
Okay.
at that, so sorry about that, but no, I don't have a specific answer for you right now on that one. It's always hard to go after Sand Hill, I'm just.
Well, it was
Right.
1.8 and she
But,
said 7, so
yeah.
I'm thinking 4?
Probably about 4.
That's what I would,
Yeah.
Okay.
okay. And then looking at our categories and subcategories, demographics of our students, also helped us have some good discussions upon there are some suspensions going on in certain categories of student demographics that we need to be very aware of. Students with disabilities.
I had a question about this graphic with the American Indian last year. What does that mean, 100%?
The previous graphic?
Means
Previous
it's,
graphic, yeah.
does that mean like if there
That
was
graphic.
probably 1 or maybe 2, 1?
The
Is
end
that what
count
you're
is
saying?
so low.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's exactly
okay.
what it is.
Thank you.
And then this is where we really put all our efforts into. And after looking at the graphs and then looking at our CSIP, our plan, this is where Christy and I put all of our attention. So our behavior goal this year in collaboration, it was with all our stakeholders, but being very specific and intentional, who are those stakeholders? So we are very aware of who that is. So it's our teachers, paraeducators, students, and families. Belfair Elementary will reduce the number of major referrals 20% for the 24-25 school year, with special focus on MLL students and students with IEPs. Just really looking at that lens. some strategies and action steps to attain this goal. First of all, we always want to recognize that in our school, we want to create a sense of belonging and a place of community, because we both really believe that in creating a sense of belonging for our students, we're going to see discipline go down because we're creating those connections with kids and really trying to figure out what it is they need. So provide explicit SEL skill instruction. So teachers will use Character Strong Tier 1 and Tier 2. This year we purchased the Tier 2 curriculum to help our teachers with obtaining that information so they could lead some more insightful groups with their WIN groups and more in depth. The counselor is using Second Step curriculum to address bullying prevention and safe touch. And those lessons started the very first week of school. Building community, so this was so important to us. Staff will conduct morning meetings and use restorative practices to build a sense of belonging and the importance of community. Student recognition, we have our positives. We have student recognition given to students for upholding the North Mason School District 4 pillars. And this year, Christy brought in some really good opportunities for fifth graders to have leadership so that we could try to get those behaviors. A bored kid can be a dangerous kid. And so instead of that, we want them to be kids who are actively involved in the school. And so some of the things there, you want to name some of the leadership opportunities?
Yeah, so each student had an opportunity to apply for a job. And so some of those are office helpers, all our specialists have different helpers. We have library helpers, assembly playmakers. So there was a big list of jobs that they were able to choose from, and they had to say why they were a good fit for those jobs. And then we went over them and they got hired. And so now they're responsible for their jobs. So it's teaching them that responsibility piece, but also at the same time giving them that sense of purpose that, you know, will hopefully show up in their behavior, so.
And we have student of concern. That's another area where we're really looking at working on that discipline, but in a holistic view. So we have our weekly Tier 2-3 meetings, and that's something we've been really diligent on this year, is to try to make sure we have representation from different areas of the school. So in that meeting every Friday at 8:45, we have sitting in the room an MLL teacher. We have one of us is there, or both of us, that's the best. The counselor is there, the psych, when they are available to be there. They are there attending, the special education teacher and the MTSS paraeducator. So they are all there representing that student of concern. So instead of it just being one person hearing about it, we try to wrap around that student with a network of people, trying to formulate a plan of intervention, but with all voices on board. So we kind of all feel like we own the responsibility of that child being presented to us. Alternate forms of discipline, so ours looks very similar to what you had presented to you from Sandhill. I'm sorry, we ran out before we printed ours off, but I can get it to if you want it. It's also in our MTSS digital blueprint. Progress monitoring process and sub-goals, SPED and MLL. So we use Swiss in our building to review the ODRs, and so in our built meetings, Christy will usually present that once a month. And it shows where discipline is happening or where behaviors are happening. So it shows the day of the week, the time, and the students with IEPs and MLL students. So it really helps us to pinpoint where things are happening in our building, certain behaviors, so we can be more diligent on how we take action. So do we need more eyes on in a certain location? What's happening that time of day? What's happening that day of the week? We do our SABRs 3 times a year to determine the SEL wing groups, and we have, like, once again, our weekly Tier 2-3 meetings to create evidence-based interventions, including check-out and check-ins for students of concern. Any questions?
For your student recognition, you talked about the jobs. That's more at the school level. Is that correct understanding? Are the teachers being encouraged to implement that in their classrooms? So it's maybe, you know, not just a few administrative select, but then also have other jobs throughout?
Do you want to speak to that? Because we have kind of had teachers be a part of this whole plan.
Yeah.
So you can
Yeah,
speak to
so for all the different jobs, we put it out at the beginning of the year, and we actually have teachers heading different sections. So especially like we have 4th grade teachers who are really interested in still supporting their 5th grade students or their former students. And so we have staff members across the board, different staff members that are leading each of the jobs. So they're in charge of what that job looks like, communicating with the teacher, working with the kids on those responsibilities.
Okay.
Fun.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Up next, Hawkins.
Robert Callahan, principal. Kevin Pattison, I'm the assistant principal. So we actually, if you look at our numbers here, we're kind of proud of them actually. So last year we were at 9.3%, and this year we're down to 3.2. Still pretty high, but we're working on that. And if you look, we're down across all 3 grade levels. So go ahead and you go to the next one there. Again, our data here doesn't show any major disparities. Asian, we're down to 0% from 33, and then you can tell that that's we had 1 or 2 kids last year. Male and female, last year 7.3%, 11.2. This year 4.1 and 2.2. So we're down again. And then we'll go ahead and go to the next one. So I wanted to focus on our ELL, and I wanted to pull out the number from 23-24. If we look at our ELL suspensions for 23-24, 12.22%. This year at 1.2. So that's significantly lower. And then IEP, again, still number higher than we want. Last year, sorry, I have to look at my notes here because it's hard to pull out of there. Last year we were at 19.74, and now we're at 9.2. Again, number's still high, but we're working through those things. So, still have work to do, but clearly we're doing work and we're starting to see the reduction. Go ahead and go to the next slide, which is our goals here. Goals, students will receive 50% fewer major referrals. We had 1,221 referrals last year. We want to be less than 600. We are on goal to meet that currently, correct?
Yeah, we're currently at about 200 to 230, which is on track for meeting the 600 goal by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Our multilingual sub-goal, students served in the MLL program will receive 50% fewer major referrals, 314 last year to less than 150 this year. And then special education, IEP 50%, we want 50% across the board. 358 last year, and we're hoping for less than 175 this year. And so how we do that, all staff will teach behavior expectations to all the students. They did that during the first 2 weeks of school. They're going to reteach in their classroom here after Thanksgiving break, and then after Christmas break we'll do exactly what we did the first 2 weeks of school and have the staff reteach those expectations. We still use our HSP program to support students, and they come in and they reflect on those goals, contact parents, and get re-regulated so that they can return to class, because like Chris was saying, we want kids to be in class as absolutely much as possible. Our MTSS team has been meeting every 2 weeks to monitor students who are getting those tier 2, tier 3 referrals or behavioral interventions, and we're still working through that system and refining that. And then we have a culture and climate team, and they talk every month and review our PBIS practices and really work on plans that will support positive student behavioral practices, so reinforcing those character traits, and we use the character strong traits. So, any questions?
Assistant Principal Pattison, I've just heard anecdotally that your interactions with students who commit behavioral infractions is much appreciated.
Oh, thank you.
That you speak with them, not at them, and so I don't have data for that, I just have anecdotes, but I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Superintendent Rosenbach, I'm really concerned with the numbers at Hawkins. And I understand that on the right side of these slides, we have 2 months worth, but on the left side, we have an entire year. And if we look at the program rates, every single group except high cap students is higher than those students that are not receiving services or are not in.
Yes.
So this is really troubling. Just even overall discipline rate in this building is vastly more than the other buildings in our district. Each grade level, the percentage is higher than other grade levels at the other buildings. So I appreciate your plans for moving forward and the fact that the numbers are lower, but we're only 2 months in. I just needed to voice my concern and my disappointment in these groups that are, again, I don't know what the incidences are, but almost 20% of students with disabilities, almost 15% of our foster students. I mean, these are students that are our most vulnerable. Almost 10% of our students that are experiencing homelessness, 11% low income. This is
I agree with you wholeheartedly, because when I look at this, and the big part to me, if I just take off the top and look at the overall discipline from last year, this year, right, I see it's down, and I agree with Director.
it's a long name.
I'm terrible. So, you know, where we're seeing 1% in the other buildings,
Yeah.
you know, 1%, 1.8, and this building, we're seeing 9.3 and 3.2.
Exactly.
Right, that's a big difference. And it's, I agree that it needs to get fixed, because this is, I know this is a very difficult age, and there's a lot of emotions and all that going on. But we need to figure out how we can get this corrected quickly.
Well, just to kind of piggyback on that, it's interesting because in the 23-24, you know, we saw that the number was, you know, for those eighth graders was 13.5. And then when we jump up to the high school and we see where they are as ninth graders, it's at 2.2%. So,
Right,
I mean,
those are the same students.
yeah, it is a difficult age group, but I wonder, you know, it'd be interesting to dive into that and see what some of that is.
So the instructional leadership team is diving into that with the leadership team at Hawkins, and we expect more than what we have so far here on the board. We expect lower numbers, and we'll continue to work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
North Mason High School.
Good evening. Chad, principal.
Steve, assistant principal.
Steve's going to walk us through a little bit of the data.
Yeah, we've all seen the numbers, so 2023, right, 4.6% like we talked about. Though it is only 2 months, there's a drop down to 1.8. Those are all those numbers are considerably lower than we had last year, so that's, and I think a big part to that is like looking at that number is one thing, 2.2%, but and we'll talk about it later. Every month when we go to our built team, we bring in the data from who are these 2.2, because looking at 2.2 doesn't really mean anything. If you look at, it's, I don't want to say a name, but student A, right? Oh, well, what is that? Why is that? So it's more important to look at who those are rather than just any number. And I think all schools are doing that. But that's a really important step for us every month with our built team, is to look at the breakdowns of not just race or IEP 504, whatever that is, but also what else is going on in that kid's life. What can we do to really try to turn this the other way?
And not just a name. If we can get a picture next to the name, it's so much more powerful when we're working with our staff.
The program we use is EduClimber, and you can hover over the kid, and when it's projected like this, their picture shows up with them, and it means a heck of a lot more when you see the kid's face, because that's a person, that's not a data point. So, see these, 2023, 24, obviously, everything's dropped. The male to female is still about double. Luckily, it's lower, but it is 2.2 to 1.2. So.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. The
Yeah,
23, 24, is that really just the only students that were suspended are white and Latino students?
That's.
Yeah.
if you look at our school, white and Latino students would be 97%. I mean, high percentage, that's, yeah. I think we talked about that one. The disabilities, 6.3 last year, 2.1 this year in this short little sample.
This number is really high.
And then, go ahead.
Our goal this year is to decrease, we weren't focusing on suspensions. As you can see, our numbers, we don't have a whole lot of suspensions, but our main issue at our school is skipping and truancy, being late to class. So we'd like to reduce that by 15% through targeted interventions. We've really, the first strategy there, Chris mentioned our pillar work that we've really focused on this year, and we've noticed it to make a difference with kids. We're honoring them, we're teaching the kids expectations, what it looks like in the hallways, what it looks like in the commons, what it looks like in classrooms. There's an example of our pillar dog tags that we hand out, that staff hand out to kids when they see them supporting one of the pillars. I'm using the word respectful and responsible a lot in the hallways when let's get to class. We're supporting our pillars. I know you're responsible. Let's go. And so that's becoming part of our vocabulary. And the first run of our TFI, like Chris mentioned, we really improved. We were at 60 last year, and now we're at 80. So we feel it's making a difference. First day of school, we talked about that earlier in the year with the board. We call it the Rise Above Day, where we spend the day teaching expectations, having a little bit of fun with the kids, but also teaching what it is to be a bulldog. And the last year, midway through the year, and we're continuing it this year, we knew we have an issue with tardies. So the train horn bell, we have a 1-minute warning bell that's different than our tardy bell. So when kids hear that, they know time to get rolling.
And the major minor definitions, I just wanted to touch on that for a second, because for us and people in the schools, it makes a lot of sense, the difference in skipping and truancy and tardy and all of those kind of things, but that's in the definitions of major and minor, so that all teachers, we've worked really hard that we're all labeling it the same, so when we pull that data, it actually matches what it is. So tardy is like 0 to 10 minutes. If you roll in a minute or two late, then you're gonna get marked tardy. Truant is if you're after that 10-minute mark. So 10 till the end of class, you come roll, whatever reason, you come rolling in really, really late. And then skipping is you just didn't come to class at all, but then that teacher sees you walk into math later. And so then we have ways to check that, like, hey, were they here? Were they maybe show up late? Whatever it is. But so those are the three differences there, and then really honing in to label those correctly so that we know when we pull the data, we're trying to figure out exactly what's going on.
But these truancy offenses, is it not the same as like what's in like the back of belt, right? This is
totally different. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, because yes, those are different. Yes, and the big thing, we've heard it throughout this year with really trying to implement a lot of PBIS stuff. Is why I think the first couple are so important. Is teaching the students and exactly what we expect from them, because we're not going to discipline our way out of situations. Just throwing detentions doesn't all of a sudden like, oh, I got detention, I'll never do that again. That doesn't necessarily work for everyone. For some people it does, but we have to really go a different route rather than just plan on detention fixing the world. So it's been a good, our teachers are buying into that and staff are buying into that too.
Any questions?
I have questions, but they're not specific to North Mason. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, James Taylor. Let's see, Lexi.
Nobody.
I'll come.
It's you. It's you.
Hi.
It's a short one.
Yeah, they don't have any discipline. This year they suspended two kids for fighting. It's the first time they've done so in 3 years.
Great.
Yep. So they're doing a lot of work in how they teach their kids in changing, so it's not just coming in, sitting and looking at a computer. So right now, they're just doing a fantastic job because they're able to focus in on every kid individually and try to meet them at their needs. There's 3 different programs. There's, James Taylor during the day, James Taylor in the evening, and then HomeLink. And they move kids between them depending on how well they're performing. And so if they're not performing very well at HomeLink, they're going to move them into James Taylor one of those 2 times because we want to see the kids progress. We're not going to let somebody sit in a program and not perform. And so they teach their expectations consistently, and I think that's one of the things that they do all the time. Anytime somebody starts stepping out, is they teach them again. It comes from the very first time that they interview kids to let them into the program. They're
Right.
saying what their expectations are.
Kind of a selective thing.
Yes.
I have questions that maybe you might want to stay up here.
Yes.
So I'm a boy mom, and I've had nephews go through the school system. And so, I mean, that's where this is coming from, this boy versus girl, the data that is across all of these different schools. Question 1, does Belfair Elementary, does that data include TK? Or has it? I know we're only in the 3rd year of
state
TK.
stuff?
The,
No,
no,
the
the
state stuff doesn't
suspension by
involve-
rate. Oh, I guess it wouldn't, because you don't have it under the different grade levels.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess what I'm getting at is, it's troubling to me that even at such a young age, right, we see that gap between boys and girls. And I'm wondering what type of professional development and training is specific to, that the teachers and admin receive, that is specific to gender, and kind of recognizing those differences and trying to address that. Like, what type of, professional development is related to that specifically?
I can't speak to what's been held in the past, because
Sure.
I frankly, I don't know. I know that we need more. And I can tell you in every district, in every building I've been in, there is that gap. And it takes quite a bit of professional development to help change what we do in the classroom. It's not sit down, be quiet, raise your hand, talk,
Right, and I
right?
think-
And how do we teach differently? Because boys, a lot of times, need to be taught differently.
And I think it starts this trend. You start getting, I've seen it with my nephews. You start getting suspended a lot in elementary school, then you develop
Disenfranchised.
this
Yes.
mentality of who you are, and that continues throughout
Yeah.
your career at school, so.
Agreed. It needs to be addressed. It's a long-term problem. You're spot on about it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Data on how many of these incidences or percentage have led to LE involvement?
Led to what?
Law enforcement involvement?
I would not have that data. We could look up and see criminal acts and pull that kind of data, because that would all involve law enforcement.
Yeah, but we can say in recent years, with the changes in regulations about whom law enforcement can talk to and when, their involvement has gotten extremely limited, if not at all, because their restrictions now say something to the effect, Chad, correct me if they've loosened up any, but basically, if a student is under 18, whether they're a victim or a accused perpetrator, they can only speak to them, they being law enforcement, with a lawyer present, not even a parent, but a lawyer. And so that means their law enforcement interest or efficacy or whatever, being able to get anything out of having a report made gets very, very difficult, because they can't talk to the kids to follow up on a report that is made.
So if we received a complaint about something very, very severe, like illegal, what is the,
We make a report,
and then we just,
and if it's something that happens at school and we can have consequences for it, we do that. But once we've made a police report, it's up to the prosecutor and the police or sheriff's department to deal with it.
right. Okay, that's what I was, because I know years ago, we waited until law enforcement completely completed their process before we would step into discipline.
And we made that transition because in those really serious times right now, there is not a guarantee that they will even be able to talk to the kids. So the school has to go ahead and do what the school's going to do.
Okay.
And so we'll do what we're gonna do, and law enforcement still may do what they're going to do on top of that.
Yeah, okay.
I forgot I had one quickie question related to my thoughts. Does Sand Hill still have that, like, mail program, like where they have like the dogs or like the dads or grandfathers coming into the
Not
school?
right now,
No?
no.
Okay. What was it called?
Watchdogs.
Watchdogs, okay.
Yep.
That might be something.
Thank
to
you.
look back. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Down to the budget status report.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
We're done.
Good evening, Board. I'm Dan King, the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. I'm here to give you the budget status report through October 31st, 2024, beginning with our other funds. So the fund balance in our capital projects fund at the end of October was $292,606. That's a difference of $9,877 less than the previous month. Our debt service fund balance was $3,127,546. That's an increase of $982,512. That's because we received taxes last month, a tax collection. And by the way, we're paying our bonds this week. And so we're going to see a significant decrease in that, over $2 million, almost $3 million, next month. Our ASB fund balance ended in October with $417,127, an increase of $19,163. And the transportation vehicle fund balance was $625,746, and that's an increase of $2,149. And we'll soon be getting an invoice for some new buses. And so we're going to start seeing that decrease because we're using that money to improve our bus fleet. Going on to our enrollment. So I mentioned at our last board meeting that we did an enrollment adjustment for budget. And so this reflects the adjustment. So you can see that our revised budget FTE in the chart there is 2,283.55 FTE. That does not include running start. That does include running start. It does not include TTK. Our November FTE was 2,286.18, so we're right now just a few students over what we are budgeted. The average for the year so far is 2,284.87. Our November TTK FTE is 34 students. And when we count the TTK, it's 2,320.18 students. So let's go on to our general fund budget status. Again, through October 31st. So beginning with our revenues. So the total revenues actual year to date, we're at 16.52% of what we budgeted. Our local sources actual year to date, 30.85% of what we budgeted. That's because we received a big tax collection last month. Our state source revenues were at 16.64%, and the federal sources, we don't have any showing here because we just started doing our claims on federal grants on November 15th. So we'll start seeing those in our next budget status report. Our apportionment to date through October was $4,254,470. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So this shows our total budgeted general fund revenues at $44,006,687. And through October, we had received $7,271,688. And the next slide shows a comparison of our revenues by source, local, state, and federal, prior year to date versus current year to date. So this goes back to the 21-22 school year or fiscal year. So you can see that change over time. Our local stays pretty much the same because it's our levy, which was a fixed amount. There are some other little smaller amounts of local revenues too, so there is a little slight increase there for this fiscal year. Our state revenues, you can see that increase across time. It's because our apportionment increases with changes in our allocations. Our federal, you don't see a 24-25 yet because we haven't started receiving those federal, but you can see the comparison of the previous 3 years there. Let's go on to our expenditures. So the projected year-end balance as a percent of budgeted expenditures is 3.4%. The total expenditures actual year-to-date, 17.19%. Our salaries and benefits actual year-to-date are 15.78% of our budget, and basic ed 17.98%. And our basic ed so far expenditures $3,684,237, and then you can see the rest there for comparison. And let's move on to the next slide. This shows our budgeted expenditures at $44,524,338, and our year-to-date expenditures were $7,655,028 through October. Next slide shows a comparison, expenditures by object, prior year to date versus current year. So the objects are salaries for certificated and classified. You can see how over time those increases. For example, in 21-22, our expenditures through October for certificated salaries amounted to about 2.3 million. Now it's 3.1 million. Our supplies, you can see that increase and purchase services. Those fall under what we call MSOCs, the materials, supplies, and operational costs. And so that's one area where there's been some big changes and increases in our costs due to inflation and changes in things like our utility costs, our insurance costs, for example. Now let's go on to the next slide, please. Special education funding summary. So this is a new addition. I shared it last month, and we'll continue this through the year. Our special ed general apportionment. It actually comes in two parts, but I put those together under program 2100. Our allocation is $4,626,333.77. And so far we've received $786,000 and some. Our expenditures so far, $799,000. So you can see, and this is pretty typical across Washington State, and it shouldn't be any surprise. And we're going to start seeing this more. Their expenditures will likely continue to exceed our revenues. And that is one of the reasons why many of the leadership groups across Washington State and K-12 are petitioning our legislatures to consider ways to improve special education funding so that it is fully funded. So we make up the difference in different ways. For example, we apply for safety net to make up the difference. Now, we have not yet started receiving our allocation for our IDEA Part B 611 and 619 grants, and we should be receiving an allocation for that December or January. And then finally, this shows our fund balance trajectory. So our beginning fund balance was $2,705,032, and at the end of October, our fund balance was $2,321,692. Everything from November on is a projection based on our expenditures and our revenues for the first 3 months of the school year. So we are working on making adjustments and considering how we can improve our fund balance going forward for the rest of the year. So that concludes the budget status report. Are there any questions?
No. Good job, Dan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So now,
I'm still here.
you're still here.
He's not going anywhere.
Okay, so last month I shared that, hey, we were working on year-end. Year-end had a due date of November 15th. We completed the year-end on time. And now we have fiscal year 23-24 all wrapped up, and we have the final numbers that I'd like to share with you. But I always want to begin with that first slide there, that really our goal and our focus is on students learning and learning well, and using our resources to support that effort. These are some of our students in class in recent weeks and months, so I thought those were great. So our general fund, which is our main fund that we use to fund most of our programs, especially teaching and learning, we had a beginning fund balance of $4,569,268. And you can see our revenues were $41,598,082. And our expenditures, oh, I put an extra 8 in there. I don't have that on my in front of me here. I promise you. Somebody messed that one up. Probably me. I'm sorry about that. That's 882. Expenditures, 43,127,580. That transfer out, that was from our general fund to our debt service fund to pay our non-voted debt. Because it's non-voted debt, we can't use our tax collection from voters from our community to pay it. So we pay it out of our general fund. So I transfer that from our general fund into our debt service fund to pay that annual bond there for our non-voted debt. So our ending fund balance, $2,705,032. Now, we have a general fund revenue 3-year comparison here, so you can see over the last 3 years how much in local, state, federal, and other revenues we've received, and you can see how that's increased by over $5 million in 3 years. So let's go on to the next slide, please. This shows our top 5 general fund expenditures by program, and you can see basic education really is our largest program for expenditures. Basic ed, $18,463,733. That's 63% of our expenditures. And the others are categorical programs, special education, voc ed, LAP, and title. And you can see there the amounts. So those comprise almost, that top 5% is, that 100% shows those ones add up to 100%, but all of those together are really approximately about 96% of our budget. Then the top 5 general fund expenditures by object on the next slide. So this breaks it down by salaries, benefits for salaries for certificated, benefits for all, salaries for classified, purchase services, and supplies. So you can see how if you add up the certificated, classified salaries and the benefits, that is over 80%, almost 85% of our budget. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Oh, I love this. So we're going to be talking about the ASB fund next, so I thought I'd share this great slide here of our North Mason High School marching band and color guard. And I did hear that our marching band, and I'm not sure if the color guard too, I'd have to check, were shown during halftime during last Sunday Seahawks game. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so with ASB, our beginning fund balance was $456,093, and we ended with a fund balance of $398,057. Going on to the next slide, our debt. Oh, go ahead.
Pause on that real quick. So, when all of the parents are paying their ASB fees, that's what goes into this. So, a common question that I get, that I'd like to see a breakdown of some point, is the spending from what the parent is spending their ASB fees and where they are going.
Oh, okay.
Right, because a lot of the parents are like, hey, I'm paying $50 or $100 for my sports fee and then $100 for my ASB fee.
Right.
Is that going in to my child's sport that they are playing.
Yes.
Right, and that's been a common question. that I've
Oh,
got.
okay. Yeah, we
So
have that. I can show
That
that
might be
data.
kind of neat
Absolutely.
stat to kind of show
Yes.
how that's going.
I can show that.
Inevitably, that'll come up as we get closer to levy and bond.
100%, that's
It'll-
kind of,
Yeah.
Yep, we can certainly show that. 100%. We have, for each club, each activity, each sport.
And by school, because this is
Yes,
all ASB
exactly,
funds, this
'cause
is
that's
not
the other
just the
part,
high
too.
school.
Yeah. And we also have fee waivers too, so many of our
Yes.
students have fees waived. We receive a grant from the state to help us with that.
okay, keep going.
Good question. Okay, and I wrote that down, so.
We can bring something to the next meeting?
Absolutely. Perfect. Okay, debt service fund, we began last fiscal year with $1,800,046 and ended with $2,041,750. The expenditures out are to pay our bond, our voted and non-voted debt. Was there another question? Okay. Capital projects fund. So our beginning balance was $295,286, and our ending fund balance was $159,381. We had some projects. We did a project on our well panel. That was a big project. We repaved the parking lot down by the Transitions Program Portable. And we are still getting some reimbursements from the state for some of those, so we're not finished making all the claims on those. We also replaced the fire panel at Sand Hill Elementary School over the summer. So those projects fell within the capital project because they were large repair projects. Going on to the next, transportation vehicle fund. Our beginning balance was $331,988. We received our transportation vehicle fund for depreciation replacement of buses at $290,075. So we're really combining that beginning balance plus those revenues that we received last year to buy a package of buses. So we're receiving 4 new buses. 3 large buses and 1 buses that will support students with special needs, in particular students who have need to use a wheelchair to get around. And so this bus will accommodate, I believe, 3 wheelchair riders. So we're looking forward to having that bus in our fleet. So that concludes the year-end fiscal report. Are there any more questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had just one.
Yes.
I guess it's kind of a trivial when we're looking at all these budgets, but I had someone approach me and they were asking, this was during the football season, who receives the benefit of the concession stands there at North Mason? They were talking about, anyway, this person was kind of heated about it and I wanted to find out a little bit more
Okay.
information if I could. And
Yeah, so the Kiwanis runs the stand for us, and the reason they run the stand is many decades ago, when students were running the stand, there were some issues with accountability and auditing issues. And they stepped up and said, we'll do it. And so they run the stand. The money they raise goes to scholarships for our students and to the ASB fund in our buildings.
And I know that's with Kiwanis, that's pretty standard, because at Highland High School or Owenta High School, Kiwanis has been running that food
And so
vendor
it
stand
benefits
forever.
all the students in our district,
okay.
instead of just a specific sport.
Is that, so like, sometimes they are selling things at basketball games, is that also?
That one, no, only, Kiwanis only does home football games, and sometimes occasional other things like a state track meet that we're hosting, or some soccer games, but mostly the football games, and then other people do basketball and other things.
okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, now to the replacement levy.
Okay, yeah, so, we have had a community group meeting for, since the beginning of the school year, to examine the need for a replacement levy for EP&O levy, our operating levy for our district, because our levy will be done at the end of 2025. So we're still collecting money next year, but then we need to have a new levy to be able to have a second collection during next school year in the April
2026.
timeframe in 2026. And we spent a lot of time looking at current costs, looking at the history of positive and not so positive results with levies in our district, looking at the needs of the district, and come up with a proposal for the board for a 4-year levy that would be based on the current property value estimation from the county at 40-some billion dollars. So it would be $1.32 per thousand for each homeowner or property owner. $1.32 per thousand would bring in, at current valuation, $5,577,446 for each of the 4 years. Now, when we estimate the levy, we estimate it based on dollars per thousand on the current property value estimation. When we write the ballot language, it's based on what that total dollar amount is. So what we're proposing is the 5.5 million over each, specifically to stay the same each of the 4 years, which we have found in North Mason, having the same dollar amount for each year of the levy is necessary to get it passed. Some districts do build in a cost of living and change that amount each year, but that is not something that our community is comfortable with. And so we've figured out that this dollar amount will work. $1.32 is the amount that was per thousand, is the amount that raised the 3.8 million from our last levy. So it's the same dollars per thousand that we asked for voters 4 years ago. It's just the property values have changed, and that will help us with the raising costs of everything else. So just also so that you know, we asked $1.32. We never actually collected $1.32 because by the time we've had the collection, property values had risen enough that we collected like $1.24 per thousand
because we
in that
collected
first year, and currently that collection is at 91 cents per thousand. But our request, the committee's work, determined that the best place to place us to be able to fund all the programs that we need to make sure we have secure schools and can cover some of the additional costs, like we heard from the dad tonight, would be to put us at that same rate that we had approved 4 years ago at $1.32, which brings in then the 5.5 million each year for 4 years. So those are that's the explanation
Okay.
for the two.
I will make a motion that the board adopt resolution number 11G24 to collect a levy amount in the amount of $5,577,446 every 4 years from 2026 through 2029, which comes out to approximately $1.32 per thousand of assessed value, which is the same rate that we adopted 4 years ago.
So I hear a motion to adopt the levy language. Any discussion?
I
was
just,
gonna say, just to clarify, it's each year for 4 years, not
Each
every
year.
4 years.
No, each
Okay.
year, the same amount.
Okay,
So-
should we reword the motion then? The motion was every 4 years, and I just don't want someone
Sure.
to.
Okay, I can make a motion that the board adopt resolution number 11G24 concerning a renewal levy for education funding in the amount of $5,577,446, every year for the next 4 years, 2026 through 2029, which comes out to about $1.32 per thousand in assessed value, which is the same rate we adopted 4 years ago.
All right. So I hear that. I hear a motion. Is there any further discussion?
I just wanted to say thank you to the levy committee, anybody who attended and showed up for that. I think that's the beginning of the work, and that's I'm appreciative of that work, and that I'm looking forward to this next step, which is getting that vote out.
Do any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of adopting the levy collection of, hold on, 77,446 every year? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the levy language is adopted.
Thank you. So the committee is now turning into a vote yes committee and are approving via electronically some newly designed signs. Then the committee then will purchase those signs and then is meeting again next Wednesday to approve a drafted PR plan. And anybody's welcome to come.
Sure,
It's a
sure.
Zoom meeting.
What was I gonna ask? Okay, do we have a need for any of the old signs?
Maybe, yes.
Okay.
Certainly the big ones, because we'd like to just put the new stuff on top of them. The signs from the most recent levy were very specific to that one, so they're not really reusable for this one. The old yellow and black ones we could use.
Yeah, those are the ones. I
Yeah,
have a ton
and then
of.
we need to add to those, and so, we're gonna, the new ones will be colorful, but, and similar, but,
Who is the chair of the committee?
well, it's kind of been Dan and, what's that?
Bethany,
Beth Ollie.
Ollie, yes.
Beth Ollie has been really the community member who's been leading the work for us, and so she doesn't really want to be called a chair, but she's helping us get the work done. So we'll be working with her and the rest of the team.
Okay.
And the levy committee that starts up again every 4 years has enough funds in their bank account to be able to purchase new signs and whatever support for this levy without having to do any fundraising to do that.
Good.
Great.
All right.
Put one in my yard right there.
Enough for my whole street.
That's it.
All right, so down to the assurance of organizational performance and policy review. Do I hear a motion about the the monitoring report?
I'll make a motion to approve, hold on, I want to get this language right. The superintendent's performance in compliance with ER 10 academic standards and practices.
All right, I hear a motion about ER 10. Is there any discussion? Are we All right, all in favor of finding the superintendent in compliance of ER 10, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I did mean to have a comment, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I really liked at the end, the research base, like all of the books and whatnot that you listed. Thank you for
Yeah.
showing
And
your
I want to
work.
thank Kyla and I reviewed what we wanted to have in the report this year together. And so I want to
Okay.
recognize Kyle for that work as well.
you.
All opposed? All right, that one passes. So down to the policy review of ER 13. Is there any discussion about ER 13? All right, hearing none. Move on to the adjournment. It looks like we have our meeting scheduled on December 23rd of our normal time, which may be a problem. So, do we want to talk about changing our date? Everybody want to look at their calendars?
And do we know we're not gonna have a quorum on the 23rd? Most likely not.
Are you gonna be? I mean, I'm looking,
I'll be in Arizona.
Okay, so,
I'm just asking my question.
so
But
what,
yeah, if we're not going to have at least 3 of you here,
I think that's an important meeting for all of us to be at too.
Okay.
So, what date works? The previous week, does that work, the 16th?
I need to look at some, let me look at this.
I can make that work
Okay,
for my schedule.
Okay, hold on. December 16th. I cannot make that work.
okay. What's another,
If there's fudge, I could definitely.
I could do that Tuesday or Wednesday, 17, 18,
17th, 18th?
or
work for me?
earlier in the month if we needed to, but
Nicole?
17th,
'Cause I know you've got
18th.
other meetings that you're,
Yeah, I think 17th and 18th I could make either one. What about you?
Pretty sure I can do the 17th, the 18th. I don't think I can.
okay. Well, I'm good with the 17th. Jackie? You good? Dana? Well, let's make it December 17th.
so I think we need a motion, right, or no?
Yep, need a motion.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to move our next regular board meeting to Tuesday, December 17th, so that we have a quorum. Which is funny, it says the preceding Tuesday, so that worked. What am I trying to say? Is there a study session needed that day?
Not
That's what I was
yet.
gonna ask, if we
Not
had anything
yet.
related to the search.
yet.
Okay.
Okay,
I don't,
so
think
at
so.
6:30 PM,
yeah,
that's the
6:30.
motion.
All right, I heard a motion to move the next regular scheduled meeting to December 17th at 6:30. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of moving it to the 17th at 6:30, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes, I as well. All right, public comment, we already had that piece. So to the good of the order, let's start down there with Arla.
I just want to say that, you know, we all came back from WASDA, the state's, Washington State School Directors Association Conference in Spokane, and that was excellent. It's always great to hear from the different school districts and just like what's going on around the state. And I wanted to ask that in our December meeting, we put in the agenda to have a report out from each board member on the different sessions that we attended, to give us some time to gather some notes and maybe some highlights to share out.
that's a great idea.
I like it.
Thanks. That's all.
Nick?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I should lead with that. Happy Thanksgiving, so I don't forget that at the end. No, I agree. The WASA conference, you know, when my son attended, as a student rep, I remember thinking, what are you doing? Like, I need help around the house, etc. Like, I really could use that, because he always found good reasons to avoid that part. But no, I absolutely loved it. As far as professional development that we seek for our teachers, you know, the same thing goes for our superintendent, and the same thing goes for us. I was amazed as a new board representative by the amount of information they could cram in and to be helpful to us, and I look forward to reporting out on that. The other thing that I just want to highlight is I've actually seen, I asked the question of Belfair because I've seen the effect of those youth having those jobs, and I've actually seen it trickle down to some of the classrooms and to see how they have jobs. And I've seen students that I've known through sports and other things that have struggled with disciplines, struggled with focus, etc., and then go in and receive one of those jobs, and it's a whole different child. And I just love to see that. And one thing I took away from WASDA is seeing some of the good things that are happening in one building and applying them across the board. I just look forward to when we can start to spread some of these best practices to some of the other buildings. So,
Yep.
Anyway, thank you.
Great. Nicole?
So again, congratulations to Mateo for the Latino Community Leadership Award and all that he does. Congratulations to Mr. King, talked about the North Mason High School Marching Band and Color Guard, the Seahawks halftime, but also they placed very high at the 59th Auburn Veterans Day Parade, so kudos to them. And then we also have some great student athletes in our district. So the Olympic League, we had Caden, Brianna, and Alicia make first team, and Caden, Xavier, Bobby, Brianne, Danner, Derek, Cameron, Taylor, and Adriana make second team. So I think that's really, really awesome. And in the spirit of being thankful, I really appreciated you all, my fellow board members, the work that we did last week in terms of learning and sharing what we learned here and there when we could grab a few minutes. And just the focus was always coming back to the students, and I appreciate having you as my colleagues, so thank you very much.
Awesome. What do you have?
I don't know if I should have made this comment at the beginning. I had a couple of girls, a lot of girls, almost the entire soccer team, come up to me and ask me about the current state of the girls' soccer coach. So I don't know if it's something I should mention now or possibly make an email about.
It's appropriate to mention it to the athletic director.
Yeah.
And
They had mentioned that to our current athletic director, but then they reached out to me saying that they wanted to do more, saying that they wanted to possibly come here and talk to you guys about it. I told them that that's not the easiest thing to do because it needs to go through the athletic director and the principal, but they really wanted me to at least mention something.
And he has heard concerns from students and parents, and he and the school administration are addressing it.
Okay.
And outside of that, any discussion is about a person's employment and isn't appropriate for a discussion in a public meeting.
Yeah.
So, but thank you, and
Perfect.
we will follow up on it again.
Okay. Yeah, they just wanted me to like comment on that.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's
Alright,
good.
All good. Anything else? Okay. So just like you guys, I really enjoyed last week. You know, going in, there was a few sessions that I was able to attend with Nicole and Arla that we attended together, and Nick, and I thought some of those were just amazing to hear what some of the other districts were doing. When Dan and I were having lunch, I had the opportunity to sit next to a superintendent that presented at one of those things earlier, and he was talking to me about some of the things that he was going to present, and just a very unique opportunity to learn. And I'll reiterate what Nicole said. It's just nice to be able to talk and kind of share notes and compare and, you know, go through all that thing. And I think it's great. Really appreciated the time. The high school band too. I was shocked when I'm watching the Seahawks game and I'm like, wait a minute. That was really cool. Past that, we talked about the Ray and Associates and our superintendent search. That will be going live here in the next couple days. So I look forward to seeing those first batch of resumes that we start getting into when we are able to look at that and Ray and Associates goes through those qualities and all that and kind of gets back to us. I'm excited to see what that comes out. But past that, that's all I got.
I would also say it was very powerful, great opportunity to learn with all of you and be at the conference last week. Lots of really interesting things to consider that can help us grow. So I appreciated that, and I was also surprised and excited to see our students show up on the halftime. I actually got a call from my mother to tell me that it was happening. So I'm very proud of our North Mason students every time they get a chance to shine. So,
Great.
and I'm thankful to be a part of this community.
Very good. All right, we are down to the board self-assessment.
Which is me.
Carla.
Yes, so we have 4 of us in attendance today. Our general meeting behavior, I will rate as satisfactory down the column because we did have a well-planned agenda, balanced participation, and work conducted in an atmosphere of trust and openness. Governance principles, were they followed? I will say yes. Board actions occurred at the policy level. And I will say yes to all except the one that is not applicable because we did not write any additional policies. But overall, I would rate as satisfactory.
Very good. Our next board meeting will be on December 17th at 6:30, right here in the boardroom. So meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Yay.